They didn't even believe in us. God did. If your business isn't growing, if your sales are not taking off, if your leads are not closing and your customers are not sticking around, don't wait for someone to tell you why. There are people who seem to be in the right place at the perfect time. Everything works out for them. The right contacts, the exact opportunities, and the ideal timeframes. And from the outside, we call it luck. But what if I told you that that's not entirely true?
What?
Sometimes, in order to get better results, you don't need more effort, just better strategy. A few tweaks in the way you think and act can skyrocket your performance in ways that seem exponential. You can stack the odds in your favor, and it's not magic.
Magic.
To be honest, it's statistics. Let's refer to the normal distribution. In the normal distribution, we tend to focus on the averages. It's convenient, and of course, it lets us generalize. Many variables follow a normal distribution. For example, height or weight in a population, human intelligence, body temperature, noise levels, the size of tree leaves, or the consumption of products. And most values cluster right around the middle. The extreme cases, which are the outliers, are rare. If you plotted this on a graph, it would look like this. Most cases are centered around the middle. The norm is somewhere in between. Average height, average intelligence, average consumption of a product. We assume that most things lie in the middle. But as the business climate and the wealth gap continues to evolve, it's the complete opposite. And that's where we go wrong. Assalamu alaikum friends, it's Ali, Alidina, and welcome back to the vlog. So I wanted to talk about the Pareto distribution. It's a normal distribution that's easy to understand, but we live in an increasingly complex world. And in this world, things don't always cluster into the middle. Very often, they concentrate at the extremes. Vilfredo Pareto noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And since then, that observation, it keeps popping up in places throughout the world. 80% of the results comes from 20% of the efforts. 90% of the revenue comes from 10% of the clients. 99% of the internet traffic goes to 1% of the websites. This isn't a normal distribution, it's a Pareto distribution. Now, most values are at one extreme, but what's rare is the middle ground. If 20% of your actions produce 80% of the results, then your resources like time, energy, and money should not be spread out evenly. It's that left side extreme where you should focus your energy in order to maximize results, and that's where real luck lives. So we could talk about personalized marketing versus mass marketing. You could send thousands of generic emails, or you can send dozens of personalized emails tailored to each recipient. The first approach has greater results, but most people will ignore you. And you'll lose potential customers because you're not taking the time to craft a message based on each person's interests and needs. In reality, fewer emails aimed at the right people generate more income. And then there's the 1% clients. Paul Graham, who's a pretty respected investor, said, "I've never seen a startup regret treating their first customers exceptionally well. Your first customers aren't just clients, they're your 1% clients. This is the upper echelon. You have to invest heavily in that 1% who came to you first. Typically speaking, these are the people who truly need and value your product and the service that you provide." It's not always the case that they won't let you down in the future, but they will generate the bulk of your initial growth. Once you're providing real value, your business might be convenient for many, but it's truly crucial for a few of them. And I suggest you focus on those few. So let's talk about relationships, like the myth of hundreds of friends. How many people can you have a life-changing conversation with? According to Dunbar's number, a person can maintain about 150 stable social relationships. And then beyond that, connections tend to get more shallow and distant. You don't need more friends, you need deeper relationships with the right ones. I'm talking about 4 or 5 people who really listen to you.
Listen, look, and listen, and learn.
Who challenge you to be better and who are there at critical moments in your life. That handful of friend keeps your circle small, and they're far more valuable than 100 empty friendships. But why does the Pareto distribution work? It's because nobody else is doing it. You have to realize it might not work today, and it might not work tomorrow. You have to have this intense understanding that what you're working on is going to work.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
And the realistic thing is that it might not work today and it might not work tomorrow. Right here, this is what I'm doing and this is what's feeding me. And you have to believe in what you're doing. And if you don't believe in it, then you haven't figured out the thing that you do best yet. But eventually you'll feel it and you'll know.
I can feel it in my nuggets.
And you only have to be right once. And that's when your entire life pivots. Most people only think in averages, metrics, and volume. But the real value is where no one's looking. In that corner of the graph where effort and outcome are not proportional, where a small, minute, really smart move yields a massive result. Because one tiny, well-placed action is worth 1,000 more. That's where the right contacts are, the perfect opportunities, and ideal timing. And from the outside, that's what we call luck. If your product or service doesn't hit one of these key metrics, you're probably leaving money on the table. So here's how we can produce our own luck. Number one, save time. People will pay to save time. Think about expedited trucking or meal kits. Time is the one thing that we never get back. If your product or service can make life faster for your customers, it's instantly valuable. Number two, you gotta avoid the pain. Pain avoidance is a powerful trigger. If you're selling something that helps your customers avoid pain, whether that's physically, financially, emotionally, those things sell like crazy. That's why things like insurance, painkillers, and therapy are so popular. Number three, things that help people make money. This one seems very obvious, but it's huge. Anything that helps people earn more money has built-in demand. Financial freedom is a dream for so many people. So if your product offers even a small chance at this, it's golden. On the inverse of making money is helping people save money. We all love saving $1. So products that help people cut costs and drive efficiency, they always grab attention. Number five are things that improve health. Anything health related will always have demand because better health equals a better life. If your product can improve physical, mental, or emotional health, it's a win. And so I want to talk about why the best entrepreneurs never ask for feedback. And it's not because they think that they've already got everything figured out. Have you ever been in a college classroom or in a high school classroom and your teacher asks you and kind of pauses and takes a look around the room and asks the classroom, does any of this make sense? You know what happens, right? Immediately the room fills with thumbs ups and yeah and nods. And all the students are nodding enthusiastically, signaling that yes, of course, they've understood everything. Except there was no way that was true. Even if the students thought that they understood everything, they didn't, but no one was going to admit it. They weren't going to risk looking confused in front of their peers. Or they weren't going to challenge the professor or the teacher because they didn't want to feel awkward or make the teacher feel awkward. Instead, everybody in the classroom gives the professor the worst kind of feedback, positive, false affirmation. This is a real life example of a lesson that I had to learn earlier on in my days of entrepreneurship, which is asking for feedback rarely gets you the truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Instead, the best entrepreneurs look for alternative ways in getting meaningful feedback. But why is honest feedback so hard to get? And it happens everywhere, and that's because people prefer to say what's easy and not what's useful. But how can we apply this to entrepreneurship? Well, you launch a product and the customers tell you they like it, but they don't buy it. Or you send proposals and the customer says, yeah, it looks great, but then they ghost you. Or you pitch investors and they say they love your vision, but they don't write a check. In all of these cases, the words people say don't match their real feedback. And that's not because they're trying to deceive you. It's because being honest is uncomfortable. A lot of people find it hard to say no. So your customers aren't really telling you, I don't get this, or I don't want to buy it, or I'm simply not interested, because that creates awkwardness and people want to avoid confrontation. So instead of giving you real feedback, they give you politeness. And polite feedback is absolutely useless. And that's why as an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to read the right signals and read the room. Because if your customers are not coming back to buy, that's feedback. And if people are signing up but they're not using your product, that's feedback. You have super high churn rates, declining engagement, and your leads are ghosting you, that's feedback. Too many founders and startups avoid these signals. They tell themselves customers just don't get it yet.
If you don't get it, forget about it.
Or our marketing isn't reaching the right people. Or they just say they need more funding. Maybe. Or maybe your product isn't just compelling enough. Maybe your pricing is wrong and maybe your message is confusing. People are actually giving you feedback and telling you it's wrong, just not using words. Most people ignore uncomfortable feedback because it stings. They'd rather believe that the customer will eventually buy instead of accepting that their products aren't good enough. They'd rather blame like a lack of funding rather than understanding that their product is flawed. But the best entrepreneurs, they lean into that discomfort. They look at the data, see the hard truths, and they pivot and move quickly. If your business isn't growing, if your sales are not taking off, if your leads are not closing and your customers are not sticking around, don't wait for someone to tell you why. Just look around. You just have to be willing to see it. The answer is right in front of you. Imagine coaching somebody that wants to start their own trucking fleet, and they say, all right, they're gonna buy a couple of used trucks, maybe their first used truck, and I give them advice. I say, hey, look, go set up a website. Let's start right there. But after a month, I get in touch with them and I ask them, hey, how's that website going? And they come back and they say, it's not ready yet. You mean 30 days has gone by and you still haven't set up the website? So I ask them, I say, what does ready mean? They say, look, I want it to look professional. I don't want people to think I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want the website to look sloppy. And unfortunately, his response told me the exact opposite of his goal. It told me that he definitely didn't understand what he was doing. Building the website wasn't the problem. Getting in touch with the lender and submitting a credit application wasn't the problem. The real problem was that this young entrepreneur, like so many other founders, was still trying to get an A. It's a mindset I see constantly, and especially in people that come to me that have masters in business administrations, you know, MBAs. They're first-time founders. They've done exceptionally well in school.
Good job.
And they're used to doing very well.
Good job.
And succeeding in every traditional system that they've ever been in. Be it a classroom, be it a boardroom presentation. They show up in the business world and they immediately start looking to play by the same rules. They're trying to get the same grades. They're trying to get the gold stars. They're trying to get the recognition. Their problem is that they're not actually trying to build something. They're still just trying to do things right. But trying to do things right in the startup phase is the fastest way to do nothing at all. And this is the danger of chasing validation, because starting up a business is not school. In applied entrepreneurship, that's like actually building a company, there are no grades and there are no professors telling you what to do. And more importantly, there's no guaranteed payoff at the end of the assignment for following the rules. As in business, you don't get credit for participation. Instead, you only get rewarded for building something that people actually want to buy. And nobody, not your advisor, not your mentor, and not your professor, can tell you in advance what this thing is. Also, your parents, they can't call anybody else's boss in order to complain about the outcome. But none of this stuff I just described is the bad thing about chasing an A in entrepreneurship. The real problem with trying to get an A is that it pushes you into behaviors that are counterproductive to the activities and the things that founders need to be doing. So you'll see people focusing on doing work that feels productive because that's what they're used to doing when they were in school. It's like you're putting a presentation or a project together. You over prepare, you over polish. You'll spend hours tweaking designs and making sure everything is perfect.
It was perfect.
And you're not showing it to your customers. You just keep dialing down into the details. You keep your product behind closed doors until it's perfect. You do all the things that you used to do in school in order to optimize things in order to get the best grades, rather than doing the minimum amount in order to create something that's effective and sells. Simply put, the skills that school teaches don't help people build businesses. They help people feel validated for a job well done. But in the startup world, you don't need validation. You need traction. And traction doesn't care how good your pitch deck is.
Don't care.
Or how well your onboarding flow looks like.
Still don't care.
Traction comes from listening, adjusting, failing, and trying again. There's no right, there's just being absolutely relentless in the face of humility. And look, founders are supposed to be wrong. Think about it. Being a great student is about getting all the right answers. But founders make mistakes over and over again. They launch the wrong features, they pitch the wrong customers, they make the wrong assumptions about what people care about, and every time they do, they get smarter and they learn. And their mistakes become the lesson and the foundation on which future attempts succeed. But you can only get that foundation if you're willing to be wrong. And if you're not, if you're still clinging on the idea to be seen as smart or right, just like you did when you were inside of a classroom, then every failure feels like a crisis.
Oh, stress.
Every misstep feels like a threat.
Oh, stress.
And every email that you send out that gets unanswered feels like a personal jab at you. So instead, you keep working and tweaking and just waiting for somebody to come give you an A, and that A's not coming. But the founders who win are never the ones who look perfect. They're the ones who mess up the most and are willing for those imperfections to be seen by the world. So typically, they're vulnerable and they're humble. They send emails that don't get answered, and they make the pitches that absolutely get rejected. They build prototypes that get ignored and completely misunderstood. It's hard, it's painful, and it's the exact opposite of what great students do. And I bring this up because most of us, we spend a lot of our youth being students, chasing the A, chasing the best grades. But if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you got to give up on chasing the validation that's synonymous with getting good grades. You have to stop trying to make things as good as possible or perfect.
Stop it. Get some help.
And start building things that actually work. And if work means that the thing is ugly, but it still gets the job done, then that's what it takes. Just get the job done, even if it's ugly.
That's pretty good.
The reason why entrepreneurial success is not the same as school success, it's because the feedback loops are totally different. In school, you're rewarded for minimizing risk, following the rules. And in startups and building a company, risk is the only path forward. So you have to rewire your instincts and stop trying to build the best thing possible. Stop trying to be impressive and chasing gold stars from imaginary judges. Make something useful or provide a service that businesses need or that people want to buy, even if it's ugly, even if it's not perfect. Because ultimately, that's the real difference between students and entrepreneurs. Students want to be right, entrepreneurs want to learn, and they're willing to fail in order to learn. And the only way to learn is to slip and ship over and over again until one day you finally get it right. Not because somebody gave you an A, it's because somebody gave you money. So my advice to you is to do the things that take no talent. The stuff that takes no talent is the stuff that differentiates one player from the next. For example, in the game of soccer, the player that sprints off the field is different from the type of player that lazily walks off. The player that hangs up their kit and puts their gear away meticulously in the locker room is different from the player that leaves all of their stuff sloppy on the locker room floor. The players that show up an hour prior to practice in order to stretch and work on their footwork are different from the players who show up at the last minute just to catch the bus. So focus on the stuff that takes no talent. As an entrepreneur, if you pray 2 rak'ah in the morning, you take your coffee black with no sugar, and you go out to your balcony that oversees the city. You brush your teeth, you comb your hair, you put your cologne on, you make your bed every single day of the work week. That's the stuff that takes no talent, but it's consistent and it defines how you start your day. Regardless if your emotions, finances, or fatigue try to convince you to do otherwise. And if you don't have a morning routine or an afternoon routine or a turn down evening routine, and you're not consistently doing things for yourself that take no talent, then you gotta write down what you're trying to get done. This is my suggestion to you. Write down the things that you're trying to get done on a long-term basis and what you need to get done on a short-term basis. Write off a checklist and then be a man of your word and force yourself to be accountable. The difference between a dream and a goal is a set of timeline and accountability. You gotta ask yourself, did you say you did what you said you were going to do by that specific time? And if you don't hold your feet to the fire and hold yourself accountable, and you're just sitting around daydreaming like someday doesn't exist in the week. There's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, keep going on. Saturday, Sunday, there's no someday. Look on your calendar, someday is not there. You gotta say, I'm gonna take this small step by a specific day or date. Take 1% steps at every single mile marker. And then pretty soon, look, none of us entrepreneurs leap tall buildings in a single bound. We're taking small steps. We're going one floor at a time. There may be chapters where you do take larger steps and you do climb multiple levels in one go at it, but at the start of it, you gotta climb one step at a time. And you should have the kind of discipline that makes other people feel uncomfortable. Like if every single thing that you do every day, like nobody's ever questioning it, trust me, you're doing it wrong. If you wanna do it right, you gotta make people around you a little bit uncomfortable. Why are you ordering fish and salad at a steakhouse? Why are you going into the gym at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you listening to mentors and coaches about becoming a better salesperson when you're already bringing in millions of dollars in revenue to your business? Like, I'm doing this because I care about myself and I want to be in the top 1%. Imagine how that person feels after you say that. They're not gonna have anything negative to say because nobody doing more than you is ever gonna have anything negative to say about you striving for more. It's always the people who are doing less. And those people tend to fall into categories of personality types. You already know what the introverts and extroverts are, but I'm talking about the ambiverts. The ambiverts are the chameleons of the business industry. Ambiverts live in the balance, right smack in the middle of introverts and extroverts. So introverts get energy from being alone, and extroverts get energy by being around other people. But ambiverts, they're chameleons. They get energy by being the right people in the right situations. Zohran Mamdani in New York City recently won the Democratic primary to become potentially the next mayor of New York City. He's a really good example of an ambivert. If you see him in different settings and in different interviews, you'll see him talking to people in the street in New York City and vibing like that. And you'll see him on the stage talking at press conferences and behaving like that. And then you'll see him inside of certain ethnic groups also talking and behaving and reacting to the crowd and reacting to the situation and behaving in a specific and particular way. This is not a problem. This is actually a key behavioral characteristic of ambiverts. People who are able to be chameleons and adjust very easily to different types of people, places, and situations. Ambiverts can dial up extroversion in order to hit their goals. So if they know that they have to be friendly and meet people for an interview or a position, they do it. But they need lots of recharge time. And if they meet people and they gotta dial it down and kind of slow down and be calm or adjust their mode or their tempo, they can do that too. And that's the reason why it's important to know your own personality type if you're an ambivert, because this way you could know are the type of things that drain you or recharge you.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
Like, for example, if you're on your calendar and you have to meet with somebody and you look at that person, you see that person in your calendar and you're like, oh man, if I meet this person, it's gonna be a long day. You know that those are the type of people who drain your energy because they don't bring out your extroversion or your natural love of other people. And then there are those other people that you feel like you could sit down and talk to for hours. They give you social energy. They recharge your social battery. So who are the people who give you energy? Who are the people who charge you up when you're with them? And who are the people who take from you? Because those are the people that you want to put boundaries up around yourself in order to protect your energy. Where do you thrive? Do you thrive in conferences or do you thrive on one-on-one business meetings? Do you do better in the park going for a walk and speaking to a potential person about business? Or do you do better over food, for example, sitting across from a person? Knowing those people and those places helps you optimize your social battery. And talking about social battery, lastly, I want to talk about places that decrease your IQ and tend to have people with lower IQ, which is people who tend to always need to be in party situations. To go to clubs, to go out, who are chasing the nightlife. If you're between the ages of 15 and 40 years old, this is probably something that's really gonna dial down and hit home because a high IQ brain is self-sufficient. It chases ideas, strategy, inner dialogue, observation, and that's enough. A low IQ brain screams and chases social validity. It's constantly trying to chase the vibe and search external social stimuli because there's nothing inside. Where one with high IQ enjoys silence and one with low IQ enjoys rushing to the club in order to stay sane. Partying is a perfect escape from anxiety, insecurity, and existential dread. Low IQ minds can't sit alone, sober, with their own thought. So they drown it out with music, alcohol, lights, and noise. Intellect, however, thrives in solitude. Depth is born in stillness, not in large crowds. And the reality is that individuality drowns in large crowds. And whenever there's a large party or a ridiculously large rave, that's where the self dissolves. A high IQ person doesn't blend into the pack. They observe, analyze, and strategize. Not just dance to the beat so they fit in. An extrovert is not a party addict. True extroverts, they can lead, they can persuade, they can create dialogue, and they can influence. They don't just get high off of other people. So check yourself. Do you actually enjoy being around other people? Or do you just fill your weekends with partying because you don't know how to sit with yourself in silence? Real power is being interesting to yourself. Thank you so much for watching and see you at the top. Peace. They didn't believe in us. God did.